This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reef Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
Oh, they're a good team. They play high pressure all over the ice. So it's kind of hard to get some momentum, hard to get a little space. But yeah, I think obviously at the end it's a tie game. Score a PP goal. That's how it goes. I think it's more to start where we give up three with exactly the things that we know we shouldn't do, and when you do those things, you're usually not winning.
Yeah, it wasn't a game we're typically used to seeing from the Tampa Bay Lightning as they fell to the Canes last night 5-4. They got down early 3-0, and even if it's in the first period, anytime you get down by multiple goals, that is tough to come back, particularly on the road. Second game of a back-to-back, that makes it difficult. The Lightning, and let me bring in my partner, Dave Mishkin, who called the game last night with Pat Maroon. It is Power Lunch on Lightning Radio. Partner, the Lightning battled back. That's admirable. We appreciate that effort. I know Rob Zettler did as well, but, I mean, I think any team, but especially good teams, you get down early, 3-0. That's tough to come back because I think you're putting so much energy into getting back to even, and you just wonder how much you had left in the tank. Maybe that's an excuse. Maybe it's not. I think those are the realities of playing in the NHL and that second game of a back-to-back. But not used to seeing it, and it happened, and the Canes are a good team. That's the other part of this, and it cost the Lightning a couple of points. I thought they could get to overtime because they usually find a way to do. You didn't get any points last night, so be it. You move on and you get ready for Saturday.
I'm going to say this, understanding the Lightning weren't absolutely perfect going to the Olympic break. I mean, they had some games even during the homestand in which, I mean, it wasn't A-plus defensive hockey for 60 minutes. I mean, think about the games that they played. Stadium Series game, they gave up, 5 goals. They had a tough game against Buffalo where Buffalo did some things that, they had a little trouble with, honestly, defensively. But the standard of their defensive play for most of the year has been very, very high, with the odd exception. They had a bad game in Columbus, which was the second half of a back-to-back as well at the end of a long travel stretch. So when we have this break, I think a lot of people are wondering, what will that do to teams that were rolling? What will that do to teams that weren't rolling? It's almost a reset, right? So what we saw in the first game back for the Lightning against Toronto, I think we said in the first period both teams were rusty in terms of kind of executing, right? And the Lightning got into their game, and I think they outplayed the Maple Leafs on Wednesday. I think last night's game was also a function of the 3-week break and in a different way. And I actually do believe, Greg, it affected both teams. Because the Carolina Hurricanes are a good defensive team. I mean, they're a top 10 defensive team. I don't think either team was very good defensively last night. And a lot of it had to do, for the Lightning anyway, with turnovers. It was one thing Rob Zettler talked about heading into the Toronto game. He's like, we have to be sharp with our puck management. Their puck management wasn't great yesterday. And, certainly poor puck management led directly to 3 of the 5 Carolina goals that were scored. You might even make an argument, and I will make the argument, the Lightning should have gotten the puck down the ice on the penalty kill, which is a little bit of puck management. It's Ryan McDonough. But he has the puck in his stick. It doesn't get down the ice. That's a failed clear. Seconds later, it's in your net. That's the game-winning goal. So I think that kind of the question for the Lightning, they are not at this point anywhere close to being in jeopardy of getting into precarious playoff positioning. We want to see them keep munching points. We want to see them hopefully stay near the top of the standings. But as we said, coming out of the break, they put themselves in a great position to get in the playoffs, and that's the goal, right? But as they go through these final now 25 games and maybe or maybe not make a move in a week at the deadline and maybe integrate some new faces or new face into the lineup, we'll see. I think the biggest question for me, Greg, is can they get to that defensive standard and maintain it, which we saw through much of the season, honestly, and when they went 19-1-1 going into the Olympic break because it was off kilter last night. But I'm willing to chalk that up to A, the break, coming out of the break, and B, the fact that they were playing the second half of a back-to-back against a rested opponent. Carolina had a lot of jump. Carolina was the more rested team. The Hurricanes came out flying, but they were not perfect either. They had to, think about in the first two periods anyway, how many dangerous chances the Lightning got, and a lot of them missed the net. Brandon Bussey didn't have to make as many tough saves as he might have. Now, he made some. He stopped Gordon on a breakaway. He made some good saves. But that's not really how the Carolina Hurricanes want to play either. So some of this is just a function of this is the byproduct of the Olympic break. And, the dust is going to settle. Teams are going to get back into the swing of things. And what you want to see from the Lightning is a higher defensive standard than what we saw last night. So the bad start was partly them, where they were not really dialed in the way they needed to be defensively. And part of it was Carolina was just flying because they were chomping at the bit, right, to get back on the ice. The first goal is a great finish from Ehlers, who tends to play pretty well against the Lightning, and a fantastic outlet from Keandre Miller. That was not a play that had any rust on it, so credit Carolina. But goals 2 and 3, the Lightning turned the puck over. I mean, one was in the neutral zone, one was in the offensive zone. They're giving up 2-on-1s from at least the blue line in, and they're tapping goals, honestly. So now you're at 3-0. They gave up other chances in the first period. Johansson kind of settled in after those 3 early goals against and did his best to keep Carolina's attack at bay. But the Lightning were getting looks too. I mean, Dominic James darted in front and missed on a chance. Kucherov had a one-timer that hit Bussey in the mask. McDonough missed an open net. This is all in the first period before the Lightning even got on the board. Then they get 2 goals 35 seconds apart. So now it's 3-2. It's a different sort of game. James ties the game on an open chance off the rush. I mean, this was like wide open. I wouldn't say shinny hockey, but I mean, it was definitely a wide open game through 40 minutes. The Lightning have a bad, I'll say objectively bad defensive zone sequence where they have multiple chances to clear the zone. Don't get it out. Second period of the long change. Their guys get stuck out there. Carolina's the short change in the offensive zone. They get 2 of their top 3 guys out there on their top line, Jarvis and Svechnikov, tired Lightning players. Svechnikov sets up Jarvis for a one-timer in a primary. It's 4-3, but the Lightning executed very well on a power play that they got, using the Carolina aggressive penalty kill against the Hurricanes because they pressured and the Lightning moved the puck more quickly than the pressure could get to the puck. That's how Point got open in front, and that's another story, Greg, that we can get to. Braden Point has found the range, I will say that. He's getting these looks in dangerous areas, and he's shooting pucks past goaltenders, as opposed to earlier in the year, either he was getting pucks and had no time to shoot, or if he did, he was missing the net or shooting it right into the goalie. Now he's finding those spots that, I mean, the goalies are just not able to stop it. That's a great sign. He's definitely, I would say he is, even before the injury and certainly coming back, playing his best hockey of the year. So you talked about getting the game to overtime. It's 4-4. You go into the third period. The Lightning get a power play early in the third. They actually had some looks. I didn't think Carolina did a good job on that penalty kill. Gensel had so many looks from the goal line extended. He just walked right in front. There was nobody on him. He almost went backdoor to Point. Bussey sprawled and stopped it. You had the feeling that the Lightning, if they could have just maybe gotten a few more pucks to the net, they maybe tried to pass it on a couple occasions where they could have shot it, and it stayed out. And then Gonçalves gets called for a penalty literally 200 feet from the Lightning's net. Pat Maroon didn't think it was a penalty. They called it a trip. He didn't really trip the guy. He kind of slashed him in the arm or the leg, if anything. But I will point out that the Lightning got away with a trip that wasn't called in the second period. Radish tripped Jarvis, and he got stick on skate blade. They didn't call it. So this one they did call. The Lightning already had a third period power play. It's their job to kill it off. They have the chance to clear. They don't. And Aho shoots a knuckle puck that has eyes and basically flutters past a bunch of players, including Jordan Staal in front, past McDonough before Stahl and goes into the top of the net. And now you're up against it, Greg, because you're down 5-4. Now the second half of the back-to-back really affected the Lightning. They were not as dangerous in the third period, especially after they fell behind again. They had more than half a period left to try and tie the game. They didn't really generate much, and you could tell Carolina, like, they smelled chum in the water, and they really pressed in the closing minutes to get that game across the finish line. So, the Lightning didn't help themselves. They didn't play well enough defensively in the second half of a back-to-back against an excellent opponent. They were chasing the game for much of the game. Just too many mistakes. Too many mistakes ended up in their net. So you're going to get games like this sometimes. Last thing I'll say is, the end of the game where the Lightning pulled Johansson, there are a couple of things that I think are noteworthy. First of all, what worked by the 6 guys on the ice to prevent an empty net goal? I mean, we saw guys dive. So you cannot quibble with the Lightning's compete and their effort. They battled to the very end. You could tell they had nothing left by the end of the game. And, they couldn't even move the puck up the ice fluidly. The thing I'll mention is they missed a penalty on Jordan Stahl. I mean, that was a delay of game penalty. And that puck went out of play off Stahl's stick. He's making a motion to play the puck. That's the difference. If it just hits his stick, he's holding his stick, it hits his stick, goes out of play. That's a deflection. That's not a delay of game. Jordan Stahl makes a motion to hit the puck. He does, it goes out of play. That is a delay of game, 100%. The officials missed it. It happens. They missed the call on Radish in the second period. But it would have given the Lightning a power play with a full 2 minutes on the clock for a 6-on-4. Who knows? That's the way the cookie crumbles. They missed the penalty. You can now challenge a delay of game for puck out of play if the call is made and you think it shouldn't have been made. But the opposite is not true. You cannot challenge a play that was called okay and say that actually should have been delay of game. If we had that, the Lightning would have challenged and they would have won the challenge. That's how black and white it was. That was a penalty that was missed, but Carolina got a break, so they kept it 6-on-5 or 5-on-6, and they were able to get those final 2 minutes off the clock. Anyway, so the next objective for the Lightning is to come back with a good effort on Saturday, try and get back on the winning side of things against a Buffalo team that, we talked about this the last time the Lightning and Sabres met. Sabres are in Sunrise tonight, so the Lightning are catching the Sabres in the second half of a back-to-back as well.
Makes sense. And, I think one of the important points individually from a game like that when you lose is that, Braden Point is feeling it. I mean, he's up to 14 goals now. I mean, he's starting to get back to where he was at that elite level, which was, really exciting to see. Good to see James score.
Oh, yeah. He had a great game. Pat Maroon made him third star.
Yeah.
In a game that you lost, 5-4.
The previous game, Gonçalves was showing things. This game, James. I think that's all encouraging from an individual perspective. Just still feels like Hetty's off, doesn't it? Just
he
not
was
where
a little
he needs
slow.
to be.
Look, that was a great pass to Ehlers, but Hedman was a little bit, if slow is the right word, like he wasn't able to cut off the pass. He wasn't able to get back on Ehlers. Like you want your stick in the lane there, but Ehlers is able to get the shot off without it being disrupted, right? So that was Hedman's man, but he wasn't the only defenseman to have an issue. I mean, the Lightning had other players that had problems, both at forward and on defense.
One thing to keep an eye on, this is just an observation. He's been playing so well this year. It is just an observation. Have you noticed that any time there is a 2-on-1 or an odd man break and Radish is the guy back, he goes down every single time? Takes himself out of position. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it works, but I think it happened again last night. He's just, you kind of take yourself out of the play a little bit. That's his desperation move. I think they teach you typically to stay on your feet if you can. It's just something I've noticed over the last really 2 to 3 weeks, but he definitely does go down. I'll be curious to see if that is something that doesn't happen moving forward, because I do think there's more negative than positive, I think, when you leave your skates to go down and try and block something. The other thing, too, is I thought Johansson was pretty good last night. Look, you give up 5 goals. Phil would probably say you gave up 5 goals. I mean, that's...
Yeah.
But I think Patty was saying to you on the broadcast, I mean, it had been a while since he played. That's a tough game to come back. You know, and he's used to that. I think sometimes the backup goaltender, you just have to have it in your mind that maybe my team is not going to have the best game just because it's circumstantial a lot of times with backups and when they play. And usually it can be in that second game of a back-to-back. But I thought, I mean, he made some pretty incredible saves that game could have been more than 5.
It was a high-chance game.
Yeah.
So it was a game in which he gave up 5, and I feel confident saying 4 of the 5 are not on him at all. And the first goal, which is maybe the one that you can say, because the guy's at the circle, but it's Ehlers on his off wing, so he's got a good angle. He made a pretty good shot there. I think he went over the pad, maybe under his right arm. Maybe that's the one that you're like, you need a save there. That was the first shot he faced, though. To your point, he hadn't played since January 24th. And it was a good shot. The other 4, I mean, these are like tap-ins, right? On odd mans. Jarvis wide open in the slot for a one-timer. And the Aho goal, I mean, the thing had eyes, right? Went through a bunch of players and bodies and, you know, went right into the top of the net. So a little bit unlucky there for the Lightning that puck had eyes. So I thought Johansson, not only did he make some very, very good saves, he didn't really allow any weak goals either. But he still gave up 5. And I think that just goes to show, like, this game was a little out of control in terms of scoring chances. But it was out of control for both teams until the Lightning started, like, running on E a little bit in the third period and having to chase again.
Yeah.
It's a little bit. Sense. Remember yesterday's show I was saying, you know, the Lightning went 11-7 against Toronto. They did it last night too, where Lilleberg was out and Carlisle was in. But the Toronto game, they went 11-7, and they really only played 10 forwards because Sabrin only played, you know, 5 minutes, well, just under 6 minutes. So they really leaned on the other 10 forwards, and I'm like, will this have an effect tonight? It might not have. But I think the fact that the Lightning had to chase through much of the game and then were chasing in the second half of the third period, it did have an effect. Because you could see at the end of the game, they kind of looked like the Toronto players at the end of the Wednesday game where they were out of gas. And they had to pull them off the ice even though they were still down 4-2. So now the Lightning get an off day, and they'll face a team that, like them, is playing the third game in 4 nights, Buffalo on Saturday, and unlike them, will be playing the second half of a back-to-back. So it's an important game, Greg, because, I mean, the Lightning have been a good road team, but, you know, they're going to hit a road stretch at the beginning of March. So this home game on Saturday is the last one before they go out on the road for 4. So you'd like to see them get back on the winning side.
Those are late games next week, too.
Well, the Minnesota game, I think, because it's a national, Dave Randorf told me that's a side-by-side for them, so it will be on Scripps. But it's the second half of a doubleheader on national. And honestly, I'm not sure if it's TNT or ESPN, but it's a 9:30 Eastern face-off in Minnesota, first game of the trip. Then they go to Winnipeg. I think that's a regular face-off time, but Winnipeg is in Central Time Zone, too. And then they come east and do... Toronto-Buffalo is a back-to-back, and it's less than, you know, the face-offs are less than 24 hours apart. Thank you, Steve. TNT, he expects a puck drop closer to 10 p.m. That is not a back-to-back, though, for the Lightning. So they'll have that late game. It's not a long trip from Minnesota to Winnipeg, even though you're crossing the border. And then the Lightning will have a day to kind of get ready for the Jets. It's like, Tuesday, Thursday, the first 2 games of the trip next week.
Should be fun.
Yeah, Minnesota's a good team.
They are a good team.
They just beat Colorado last night in Denver.
Do we need to talk a little bit more about Nikita Kucherov and just the points? I mean, I know it's, you know,
crazy.
What we're saying. I get
he was held to 1 goal last night.
I mean, Dave, is my math off? if you average 2 points per game at 53, that puts you at 106, I think, correct? Would be he's got 95. He's got 95 points through 53 games. I mean, it's a different era than what we saw when Gretzky played in the 80s and to a lesser extent with Lemieux. I think those are two players you could look at and said 2 points per game. You know, if there was anybody that was going to do it, it's those two guys, right?
Yeah.
I think Lemieux got, was it 1.99 or something like that? It was just something crazy. In today's NHL, to be that close to 2 points per game, come on.
And given that the first month was a slow start for Kucherov.
That's what I mean. This is incredible. I mean, he's basically, since December, right, averaging almost 2 points per game. I think it is. I mean, I think they were in the game notes. It's like, I forget what date it was. It was like December 9th, and it was like 26 games since he's been averaging, what is it, Steve? He's 5 points behind McDavid. The Lightning have 3 games left to play. Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, you're talking about the scoring race for sure. He's in it. I'm marveling at the fact that this person, this hockey player, is going to be putting himself in just uncharted territory with some of the greats of the game. I like to look at the all-time scores. I check that out a little bit because it's fun to see some of the current players kind of move up in those rankings, and their cutoff basically is 700 points, and then, you know, I think it's like 250 players that they have there, and
what does that 700
I think it's just their cutoff.
Like
I think it's
the
just
greatest.
Their cutoff.
Oh, okay, where it stops.
Yeah, where it stops. I mean, obviously there's more behind that, you know, but it just starts there, and it's fun looking at all the players. Like Crosby's close to surpassing Yzerman, so now you're getting into like the top 8, top 9. Phil was in the top 10 for the longest time. Malkin, I think, just got into the past Brett Hall, so he's 25th.
Right.
You have Patrick Kane, but then you look at 3 players of this generation who I think are going to have a say to be in the top 15 all time in scoring: McKinnon, McDavid, and then there's Kucherov.
Mm-hmm.
All 3 of those players, in terms of their age and their points, they're right on pace with some of these greats of all time. I mean, McDavid is just crazy. I mean, the numbers he's put up, obviously. But then you look at Kucherov, and you're like, man, this guy is going to be going for a 6th 100-point season, right? The assists, I mean, over 700 now. You know, we pointed that out. 28 points in his current 12-game point streak. Yeah, I mean, that's crazy.
And this 12-game point streak came after he had a 10-game point streak. So he's only had 1 game in the last 23 games in which he has failed to record a point. This, by the way, coincides with the Lightning going, 22-1 in the last 23.
For sure. So,
and in the 1 game in which he did not have a point, the Lightning won in Pittsburgh 2-1 in a shootout. Who scored the shootout winner in that game? Kucherov.
Right. For sure.
Didn't count on the stats, but I mean, it did. He got a shootout deciding goal, but that's the 1 game in which he has not recorded a point in the last 23. And even in that game, he had an impact on the Lightning getting the 2nd point.
It's hard to imagine, and Lightning fans who have been with this team longer than I have can appreciate everything that guys like Marty and Vinny did. And Stammer when he came up. And Stammer's numbers when he's done are going to be pretty incredible in and of themselves. But this is another level, Dave. This is another level with Kucherov.
Yeah.
I mean, this is incredible. I mean,
well, he's different.
Embrace the greatness.
He's different than any other player in Lightning history.
Yes.
And he's different than any other player in this current iteration of, you know, this generation of hockey players, where we have some of the all-time greats playing right now. Ovechkin, Crosby, I mean, you mentioned Malkin, McKinnon, McDavid. I mean, some are near the end of their career, some are closer to the beginning of their career, some are in the middle of their career. There's nobody like Kucherov playing in today's game. I think it's fair to make the comparison to Gretzky, even though Gretzky and Kucherov were different Gretzky was not Kucherov, and Kucherov is not Gretzky. But the way that they see the game, think the game, I think that's the kind of common denominator that made them different. So when you look at other Lightning players, great players in franchise history, you really can't compare any of them to Kucherov.
And I'm not sure you can compare, I know we're going off track a little bit here, but it kind of comes back to what he's doing game by game. I mean, I think Stamkos was unique in many ways with his goal scoring abilities. I mean, we just never saw somebody in Lightning history to do it at his level for as long as he did. I mean, that's we've said this before. I think there was Alex Ovechkin, and then there was Stammer in terms of this generation's goal scorers. There's no question about it in my mind. So unique there. And you can make the case Marty was unique, his stature, playing the wing the way he did. But Kucherov, I just think, is that times whatever it is. And the fact that you look at him, and if you want to say McKinnon and McDavid right now are kind of the three best offensive players in the game, I know there are people who are starting to come around and saying, "Look, no, Kucherov does get his credit, and he is in the same class." I don't like. I think if
not everybody is giving.
I don't
credit.
I don't think many people understand the numbers he's been putting up. I don't.
Well,
and how close he is.
If people are writing articles or going on talk shows and speaking about, here's where we are with the Hart Trophy, with 20 some odd games left in the regular season, and they don't have Kucherov on their list, they probably are not qualified to be spouting an opinion, or they should be spouting an opinion. So he needs to be included in the list, even if he's not going to get a first place vote. To just exclude him and be like, well, McKinnon and McDavid and Celebrini, and maybe throw in a defenseman, let's say, if there's a defenseman that you feel is warranting this kind of attention, I don't see any way that you can't include Kucherov in that conversation. So he should be getting the attention. I honestly don't see a lot of, articles that are kind of in that vein. I'm not listening to talk shows around North America, but there's enough where there's smoke, there's fire. We hear from enough people who do read these articles, who do listen to these shows, that are saying Kucherov is not getting his due. I mean, it's really inexcusable, Right. It would be like me not acknowledging Celebrini. Celebrini will probably not win the Hart Trophy this year. But to just not acknowledge the season that he has had, the gap between himself and the next closest guy on the Sharks, and the fact that San Jose may get into the playoffs with him doing virtually all of the heavy lifting offensively, to not include him in the MVP discussion is a disservice. I don't get a vote for it, so it doesn't really matter what I think or what I say. But I think the same is true of Kucherov. There's no argument that you can make that would disqualify Kucherov from being in the conversation. I mean, we just told you some of the numbers. And his run really from, let's just say mid-November. I can go back and look and see when he really started heating up. Let's say from mid-November, a month into the season, 6 weeks into the season, nobody has touched him. Nobody. He's gained ground on McKinnon and McDavid. He's like one of those, horse races where, they come around and there's the horse kind of in the middle, and all of a sudden it starts like gaining ground, right? And there are the two in the front, and that horse comes on the outside and just like galloping ahead and just eating up the distance. That's what Kucherov has done in terms of the scoring race. And now they're rounding the turn, right? Yeah. We're heading into the stretch run, and we'll see what happens. Yeah.
It's just pretty incredible. It's something I think, look, after a loss, we can talk about why they lost. We're not going to dwell on it. This team is a really good team. There are things to point out. We do. We're not going to perseverate on it. They're going to move on to Buffalo, and we'll see a new game. But I think what is happening with this team, some individual players are performing at a really high level, Kucherov being one of them. and you know me, I don't like to exaggerate a lot of times when it comes to people's productions. I think both of us call it like we see it. And we've seen some great players through our time. What Kucherov is doing is uncanny. And again, this pace, he is flirting with small time greats here. And I think it's worth looking at. I told you the other thing I took from the game was just Braden Point it feels like he's back.
Yeah.
It feels like he's back.
The way he's skating, the way he's finishing shots.
Please, I mean, that's kind of, you get him back. See, here's the thing about Point. You get him playing like he's doing now, it is almost like bringing in a new player at the trade deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Because we didn't see the elite level for the whole season. We're starting to see it now. Mm-hmm. You get him playing that way. And look, maybe that helps in his faceoff too.
Yeah,
maybe
he's done pretty well. Like I think he went 13-10 against Toronto. What did he finish last night? 13-13. So I mean, it's not just that. I mean, 50% is better than his season percentage, but the fact that he took 26 faceoffs after he took 23 the night before is good. I like the fact that they're giving him all these faceoffs because sometimes he defers to Gensel, and part of it is they don't have Cirelli or Paul available to take faceoffs. We'll see if Cirelli's able to return tomorrow because right now we don't know. But Rob Zettler on Wednesday said he's a possibility for Saturday, so getting him back would certainly help. But having Braden Point as a guy that's taking, let's say, at least a third of the team's faceoffs, understanding he's one of the centers that would be in the top 9, right? Of the top 3 lines, you're going to have 3 centers. So if Braden is taking, let's just say, a third of the faceoffs, including power play faceoffs, which he often does, depending on who's on the other side. Sometimes they have Gensel take it. The fact that he's taking a lot and doing pretty well coming out of the break is a very good sign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I don't think he's going to be used in this specific right-handed defensive zone faceoff role that we talked about, where the Lightning, let's be honest, they could use somebody like that. But for Point to be taking, over 20 faceoffs 2 games in a row and doing reasonably well is a good sign.
It is. I want to get to this question. Came a couple of days ago, partner. We just never got to it, and it's our good friend Jim in Jacksonville. I want to know, does John Cooper get credit for the results of games played during his absence? I can't remember during his absence with the COVID protocol in Vegas a few years back and earlier this season for a personal situation, if he did or did not.
He does not. So when Coop missed at least 1 game, maybe 2 games earlier this year. I think he was out of town and didn't get back. I think weather prevented him from getting back. And we had talked about Jeff Halpern picked up his first win. It sounds like, I can't say for certain, but it sounds like Zettler kind of had the head coach hat on these last 2 games.
Yeah, it looked like it.
But that's what I remember, that Halpern picked up his first win. So if Coop's not behind the bench, he doesn't get credit for a team win or a team loss or a game coached. Steve says he did get credit. That's interesting. So why were we hearing Jeff Halpern got his first win behind the bench?
All right, we need to bring somebody
I stand corrected.
We need to bring somebody in.
John Cooper gets credit, even though he was thousands of miles away.
That's a good gig.
Well, at least this time. Against Toronto, he was thousands of miles away. I don't know where he was earlier this year.
That's pretty funny.
We were wrong. Okay.
We don't.
Look, on this show, we admit when we are wrong. If we know we're wrong, we admit it.
Let me get to a couple here. Matt says, this was from yesterday, we never got to it. So glad to have you guys back. Not the same without you. Stu just keeps proving why he should be on the team. And so glad Pointer seems to be getting his game back. Bummed Vasi didn't get his shutout. Again, that was from the other day. Yeah, I would agree. We kind of hit on all those points, and you're not going to be great every game, and certainly we acknowledge that. but for the most part, Stu has been consistently good to very good. And yet, the other thing too is you pick up little things over the years, watching games, watching coaches speak about players. Just they talk about Stu differently a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
They just he's really good on the puck. He makes good first passes. He's strong. I mean, you can tell they like him a lot. And I know we've had these conversations about who's coming out, who's going in, and when everybody's healthy. If everybody's healthy, it's a moot point at this point, maybe. But I think we both have felt pretty strongly that Stu was going to stay in.
Mm-hmm.
Prove me if I'm wrong, right?
Yes.
Whatever they say. Bolts fan Syracuse, we always appreciate her opinion. She says, unpopular opinion. I love our veterans, but these young guys are making a case for the future of the Bolts blue line. Crazy thing is, Hedman, Chernak, McDonough are all locked up for the next several years with NTCs. What does that mean for Stu, Lilly, Ratty, and Crozier? It's a good problem to have. Let's state the obvious. If you have listened to this show, Bolts fan Syracuse, which I know you have because you often interact with us, often. Not all those guys are going to be with the Lightning. They're just not. I mean, that's my opinion. I have said repeatedly, and I will continue to say it, when you have an abundance of riches at a position, and I think we would say, at least at this point, when everybody's healthy, the Lightning on the back end have 8, 9, if you want to go down to Syracuse and find another player, 10 deep. Now, not going to trade all of them away because you need depth. But you're not going to be able to keep all these guys. And you can use them and flip them to get some assets. She brings up a good point about the veterans, no trade clauses, and there are ways to work around those. We're not there yet, but there are ways to work around them. And I think also, too, when you sign players who are in their 30s to decent-sized contracts, I think there's a little bit of an understanding that once you get to the end of those contracts, it's going to look a little different. You may be finding ways to trade them. You may be finding ways to buy them out. You just may be finding ways that they're not playing as much as they used to. So it looks crowded right now. It has worked to their advantage because they've had so many injuries, where we haven't had a ton of discussion about, boy, you've got 3 Lightning defensemen who are sitting that should be playing. Eventually, we may. But I think the right answer and the right way to look at it as use it to your advantage now, knowing that at some point you're probably going to have to make a move or two to allow the numbers to fit a little bit more. And that could be contractually, and quite frankly, that just could be positionally where guys rank on the team on the back end. So good problem to have. It's not going to last forever. Use it to your advantage.
Yeah, I like your expression, good problem to have. These are the sorts of problems general managers like to have.
How'd you like to have those problems, right?
Yeah,
I have too many good players.
An abundance of riches.
Right. I love it.
And yeah, sometimes you need to make hard decisions.
Yeah.
Some of these players you're not going to be able to move, though, not because of no move clauses. They finish their contracts and they leave. And that happens sometimes too, where you can't bring them back based on, cap restrictions. They choose to leave. See what happens with Darren Radish. I mean, he is a UFA. If Darren Radish decides, I'm going to go test the market and I want to go somewhere else, that's his right.
Yeah.
I think the Lightning would like to have him back, but once you reach that point, that's the U, unrestricted. There are no restrictions except you need an offer from a team. But if he goes to free agency, he's going to get offers. Other guys,
no doubt,
a little bit of a different situation.
Yeah. I don't see a scenario, and I don't know, Bolts fan, if this is where you were headed. You might not. So if it's not, we'll live to fight another day. But I don't think we're getting to a point where you're going to be sitting Ryan McDonough and Victor Hedman because you feel like some of these younger players are performing better.
What you might see, though, Greg, is more limited roles.
So that
And
you could see.
that comes with, just
think
the
so.
nature of you're nearing the end of your career. I mean, I'm not saying that Ryan McDonough and Victor Hedman are at the end of their career, but, they are in their mid to late 30s, and sometimes your role changes as you get into your mid to late 30s. I mean, speaking frankly, look at Hedman's role this year. Some of it's been due to injuries, but, as we speak right now, he's the defenseman on power play 2, and he's playing on the third pair. I don't know if that's going to continue, but sometimes a player's role does change as they get older.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing
Well,
to accept.
it may not be okay for the player.
It's a hard thing to accept.
The player who's used to being the guy or one of the guys.
Do you just go Corey Perry? Do you just go Corey Perry?
Corey
I love
Perry
playing.
is a great example. Yes.
Where do you
He's
need?
like, exactly. I just want to be a part of this, and I want to contribute however I can. I don't care that I've won the Rocket Richard, or I don't care that you don't care that I've won the Rocket Richard, that it doesn't have any bearing on how you're going to use me now.
Yeah.
Forget what I've done in the past. What was it I saw? I saw a highlight of Crosby's golden goal in 2010 in the Olympics. And, the Canadian players storm off the bench and they're mobbing Crosby. I saw Corey Perry there. Mm-hmm. Corey Perry was playing on the 2010 Olympic team for Canada. I mean, that's where he was as a player for much of his career.
That was 16 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Where does the time go? So this was this came from Bolt's Breakdown. It wasn't directed towards our show. Syracuse fan retweeted it, and I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it went on to say, Gage, Gonsalves, Braden Point, and Nikita Kucherov have been a dynamite trio for the Bolts. John Cooper originally put them together on December 27th, the first game out of the Christmas break. Since then, they've played 9 games together, averaging 8 minutes per game. I don't know if that's right. Yeah, maybe. In those 9 games...
Well, as a trio, maybe.
As a trio, yes.
Yeah.
In those 9 games, they've scored 13 goals and allowed 0. 13-0. And then they say, I think it's safe to stop doubting.
Yeah. Well, now I'm going to look at last night and see if they were on the ice. Well, at the end of the night, Point and Kucherov were even, as was Gonsalves.
Gonsalves was +4 the other night, right?
They were on the ice for the Taylor Hall goal, but they offset that when Kucherov scored. Talking about even strength. Then, of course, Point scored on the power play, but
Bolts fan also said
minus.
The other day against the Leafs, it was an amazing game for Gonsalves, who was finally hitting his groove again. His shot and his playmaking abilities on display against the Leafs. Now it needs to be consistent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Al, again, this was after the Leafs game. Good first game back for the team. Also, Lilleberg and Chucky D picked up right where they left off before the injuries.
They were a good pairing. It's been a while, so you might have forgotten because Lilleberg got injured in mid-December.
Yeah.
But leading up to his injury, when the Lightning didn't have Hedman, they didn't have McDonough, and they didn't have Chernak for much of that portion of the season, you had Destu and Lilleberg as a pair, and Lilleberg was on the right side. Now, that has looked a little different because the Lightning, coming out of the Olympic break, have gone with 7 defensemen for the 2 games, and Lilleberg only played in 1 of the 2 games. But they definitely meshed well as a pairing. Destu can also play the right side, but primarily when Destu and Lilleberg were together, it was Lilleberg playing the right side, which is his offside because he's a lefty defenseman.
Makes some sense. At Bolts Radio, if you want to get involved in the conversation, you certainly can. Those are some good questions, so I appreciate that. And I think I find it still interesting. And the question is, where are you going to play them?
Mm.
It does feel so long ago, doesn't it, that Geeky and Chafee were on this team?
Yeah, well, it was long ago.
Yeah. I mean, it just speaks to probably where the team is collectively. I think those guys are doing well down in Syracuse by all accounts.
Mm-hmm.
But these are things that happen, I think, when you've got a team who's not really tinkering with anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's, also super impressive. So just another thing to almost flag a little bit there. It's pretty cool to watch. What other questions do we have here? Is Coop expected to be behind the bench on Saturday?
Yes.
Yes.
Expected to be.
I would anticipate that for sure. Happy birthday to Braden Coburn. Okay.
Happy birthday, Kobe.
Happy birthday to Kobe. We appreciate that, Steve. Thank you for the feedback there. This one comes from Doug. He says, where do you think Carolina falls a little short compared to some of the elite teams in the East?
Carolina is a perplexing team to analyze when you are trying to understand why they have not, as a group, gotten to a Stanley Cup final. Because under Rod Brindamore, they made the playoffs every year, and you can basically mark them down to excel in certain areas and basically be around the same ranking in those areas every year, even as they may change some players. It's like players come in and seamlessly slot in. There's one notable exception, and that was Rantanen.
Yep. Who
went there and for whatever reason, whether it was the system, I mean, there were other Finns. Like he knew some of the other players on that team, including Aho, who he's played with a lot, in international competitions, including at the Four Nations. At the Four Nations last year, Rantanen was a member of the Hurricanes. It was after that they moved him to Dallas. But other than him, most players who come into Carolina seem to do really well and like it there. They win. Why have they not gotten over the hump? And I think there are a lot of different reasons based on the year. Their penalty killing, which is closer to the middle of the pack. That's the one area this year that has been a little lower. Usually they're a top 5 penalty kill team. There have been playoff years, Greg, where their penalty kill is completely imploded, including in the year they lost to the Lightning in 2021. You've talked about, do they have game breakers offensively? Sometimes you're in a tight game. It's 1-1. You just need somebody to make a play. And they don't have a McKinnon. They don't have a McDavid. They don't have a Kucherov. Aho is a terrific player. Jarvis is an Olympian. He's a terrific player. But they don't have an absolute superstar, which allows them to roll their 4 lines pretty well. And that's a mark of their team. But as I say that, like, they've won overtime games. They rarely lose in the first round, Greg. And often in the first round, they're having to win a game in overtime. And somebody's making a play. So it's not only that. I think there have been years where their goaltending has let them down a little bit. Maybe Brandon Bussey is the answer this year, but it's hard to argue that their goaltending has been subpar because they've done really well in the regular season. And then in 2 of the last 3 years, they ran into a Panthers team that, like, everything has gone right for the Panthers in the last 3 playoff years, with one exception. They lost to Vegas in 2023 in the Stanley Cup final. They've won every other series, and they have leaned on their opponent. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. Carolina's not the only team to have lost to the Panthers in the last 3 years. So some of it is the opponent. I like their team. What Pat Maroon said to me last night off the air was he feels Carolina is a much better team at home than on the road. Even though statistically they've done well on the road, but he's like, the way they play, that in-your-face style, he feels is more noticeable at home than on the road. And he's like, maybe that's why they struggled in the playoffs. There was a year they lost to the Rangers. You may remember this, Greg, because the Lightning ended up playing the Rangers in the conference final. So this is 2022. Carolina had home ice. Carolina won the first 2 at home, went to New York, couldn't win games 3 or 4. They come home, they win game 5, go to New York, lose game 6. They can't win a road game in that series. If they won one road game, they would have won the series. And they come home in a winner-take-all game 7, and the Rangers beat them. So that goes to Patty's point that maybe they've just been a better home team. He's not just saying that they are a better home team. It's like what makes them so hard to play against is more noticeable, is more prevalent when they are at home as opposed to being on the road. And there is something to that. Like you get that momentum rolling on the road. Sometimes it's hard to just, dominate another team the way that they can at home. It's a good question. Are they a cup contender again this year? Yes, they are. They are. They're going to have questions about the goaltending because Bussy has never been in the NHL before this year, but his record is like sensational. His numbers are sensational, but he's unproven. So they get into a playoff series, and it's going to be like, what are they going to get from Brandon Bussy? Kucherov is injured, and Anderson is now the number 2.
Sure.
So
it's interesting. They, I don't know if they have a little bit of the Nashville Predators under Barry Trotz. Some good teams that just never could get over the hump.
I think their teams have been better though than those Nashville teams. Those Nashville teams made the playoffs, but they were usually kind of a lower seed. Honestly, I don't know that a lot of people were like, other than the one year that they won I think they won the President's Trophy, but if not, they were the number 1 seed in the West. So the year they lost to the Penguins, 2017, they were a surprise team.
Yeah.
It was the next year they had the 1 seed and they lost to Winnipeg.
And I think Nashville might have had a better back end collectively. Remember, that was one of their strengths.
They had a terrific back end. They had trouble scoring, I think. That's probably overstating it.
Yeah. But
scoring was more of a challenge than defending. And they had great goaltending too during those
So
those
interesting, maybe different comparisons there, but I do think at some point that's one of those. It's not Toronto because I think Toronto's different a little bit. But is that one where you start making changes to make changes because what you're doing hasn't got you the results that you wanted?
But
which is the Stanley Cup final?
Okay, if that's the result.
Well, that should be right.
Well, yes, but this is the old San Jose Sharks argument for me. Not the Sharks of the last few years that have missed the playoffs basically every year.
The Pavelskis and the Thorntons, right?
Yeah, so so the Sharks got to a Stanley Cup final, I'll say finally, in 2016. They lost to Pittsburgh. Prior to that, though, you can go back to like 2003. I think they made the playoffs every year. And there were a lot of years where they were like division winners, top seed. It's not nothing to have that level of excellence year after year after year after year after year, where you are playing 82 and you are excelling to the point that not only are you making the playoffs, you are finishing at or near the top of the league. So what happened in the playoffs? By hook or by crook, they would lose, right? Sometimes they lost the eventual Stanley Cup champ. They were kind of like Carolina. There was one year where they were shockingly upset in the first round when they had the best team in the league. 2009, they lost in the first round to Anaheim.
Yeah.
Most years, though, they were getting past the first round.
Right.
They were getting to the second round, getting to the conference final. One year, I think the year they made the final, they beat St. Louis. But what did that mean? Did that mean that you were going to trade Joe Pavelski? Did that mean that you were going to walk away from Patrick Marleau or Joe Thornton or Dan Boyle when he was on those teams or Nabokov as the goalie? Sometimes good teams lose. Now, the point is to win a Stanley Cup. So at the end of the day, they did not meet their goal. But I'm not sure that there was some like drastic change that needed to happen.
But I don't think Carolina...
I talked about Julian, the randomness of hockey. I think San Jose fell into that. I think there is a little bit of that to Carolina.
I don't think Carolina has those players, though, that you just mentioned, that San Jose did.
Yeah.
In fairness, Thornton's a Hall of Famer.
I'm trying to draw a comparison.
The comparison is
these teams are doing well, and it's not just 1 month. Like Carolina is doing well for 6 months every year.
That is without a doubt, you can almost pencil it in. Carolina is going to be one of the best teams in the regular season.
Maroon talked about the way they play, like in a 7-game series. I talked about the full court press in basketball. Can you sustain that over a 7-game series and then over 4 rounds? Maybe there's something to that. Maybe it's the style doesn't translate as well in a playoff series where you're seeing the same team every game for 2 weeks. But again, they're not losing the first round.
And that's fair.
Rarely ever.
And that's why I said, maybe it is style. And maybe that's where you look behind the bench. And maybe they're playing that way because they don't have games where they can rely on some star players to get you out of a gym. Like you mentioned Thornton, and we'll end on this. You mentioned Thornton, Pavelski, Marlowe.
Mm-hmm.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I think Thornton's in the Hall of Fame, or will be if he's not.
Yeah, I think he is.
Yeah. I want to say I think he is. Marlowe and Pavelski are borderline Hall of Famers. I don't think they're quite there yet, but those guys are knocking on the door. Right? I think Marlowe had over 400 goals. Pavelski might have been 5. I don't know. Close to it. I feel like very close to it. And Pavelski obviously had a nice run with the Stars too, towards the end there. But I think in Burns,
he was a big part of those teams.
An elite defenseman on the back end. I'm not, again, it feels like San Jose had at least more of those star players that I harp on, more than Carolina.
Their run was longer than what Carolina's run has been to this point, too.
Yes. So it'll be interesting to see. And that's what it is. Yes.
Have you told us about Reef Rum today?
I was just going to say, I got to do a Reef Rum rating.
We need to close with Reef Rum.
Somebody jokingly said it'd be fun if you did the show while you were drinking Reef Rum.
Yes.
I don't know how fun that would be afterwards.
It'd be fun for the listeners.
You can enjoy some of that Reef Rum tonight. Smooth, versatile, now pouring at Benchmark International Arena. Order a Tropical Wave or a Lightning Mule and taste why fans are switching. Reef Rum is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask Reef Rum by name. Go Bolts. Please enjoy responsibly. All right, partner, we have a game tomorrow at the rink. I will see you there, and it should be a good one.
Yeah, and then we have a show Monday, which will be a departure day for the Lightning. Excuse me, as they head to Minnesota. Minnesota and Seattle are the final 2 teams. They're the 2 teams the Lightning have yet to play this year. So the Minnesota game is coming up after they play Buffalo. Seattle's a little bit later in March.
It'll be great. I will see you
So
tomorrow.
we'll be pre-taping Monday. But yes, I will see you
That's
tomorrow.
what that means. We are pre-taping
That's what
Monday.
that means, yes.
I will be pre-taping with all of you and Mish on Monday. All right, partner. Great job as always. Talk to you tomorrow. Thanks to Steve Ersnick, everybody who joined us this week. We appreciate you guys. I am Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.